Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, and welcome to today's webinar, Introducing Scite Tables, AI for Data Extraction from Scientific Literature. My name is Julia Heeson, and I'll be guiding our session today. So in the world of scientific research, I think we all know the challenge: valuable data points buried within dense publications, requiring hours of extraction and organization. Whether you're comparing methodologies across studies, tracking specific outcomes, or building comprehensive literature reviews, the process has traditionally been very labor-intensive and also time-consuming. So we're very excited today to introduce you to Scite Tables, which is this new feature within Scite Assistant, specifically designed for researchers who need to extract and organize specific data points from scientific literature in a structural and tabular format. Okay, before we get started, let me introduce you to our presenter today. So we have Heidi Nichols on the call. She is a product specialist at Research Solutions and Scite, and she's the one who will be taking us through Scite Tables today. Welcome, Heidi.
Thanks, Julia. Happy to be here.
Cool. Okay, so let's go quickly through the agenda. So in just a moment, we'll discuss some of the challenges that we see in literature reviews, such as identifying relevant papers, information overload, and others. From there, we'll dive right into the live demonstration, go through a few of the most common use cases. And then, as usual, we have dedicated time for all of your questions. So on Zoom below, where it says Q&A, feel free to add your questions as they come up. And know that we'll have dedicated time at the end of the webinar to answer hopefully all or most of your questions, depending on the time. Okay, with that being said, Heidi, over to you.
Thanks, Julia. I'll take it from here. Awesome. So welcome, everybody. I'm excited to talk to you about Scite Tables. The webinar today will be heavily focused on a demonstration of the tables functionality. So we're not going to bore you with a bunch of slides on the webinar today, but I do think discussing some of the challenges that we see from our customers on things like literature review and discovery is an important way to queue up our demonstration today, because it really will give you insight into some of the problems we're trying to tackle here at Research Solutions, and then also some of the problems that Scite Tables specifically can also help alleviate. So the first option you'll see here, of course, is finding relevant sources. And I think that's a key one, of course, in the life sciences industry, and also with things like product development and making informed decisions within your institution or within your research. So finding the right paper can often feel like finding a needle in a haystack nowadays. So there are obviously multiple sources you can use to search for papers. There's things like Google Scholar, you have PubMed, other databases like Embase. So the sources are certainly abundant, which of course do require multiple search strategies. And then you have to sort of spend hours aggregating, extracting, and understanding, as well as validating all of that information that you're trying to search for. Related to that, finding relevant sources is made even more difficult by the fact that there's just so much information available today. So researchers are often just overwhelmed by the amount of information that's available. So it makes it just harder to search and also weed out the papers that are not relevant. So I know these two areas, there's been a lot of interest in how AI can help to solve these problems. But of course, we'll talk a little bit about that today as well with Scite Tables. But reliability and trust always does remain an area for concern as well. The next topic here is data extraction and synthesis. So you'll actually see how Scite Tables is going to tackle this in real time today. But throughout the process of reviewing literature, being able to really understand specific insights and information from the literature, aggregating it in a way that you can make sense of it, and then even finding gaps or trends in that data is something that's often a very manual and time-consuming process. So again, we'll focus our demonstration today on a lot of these key areas, but specifically data extraction and synthesis. The next one is managing references. And this speaks more to, some of the research solutions, additional capabilities through things like Article Galaxy and Article Galaxy references, but having a trusted place to store, organize, and manage all of the literature you find, as well as being able to share it with, colleagues or other researchers if needed. That is another challenge we often see in this process. And then lastly, access to things like full text papers. So, in an ideal world, everything, of course, would be open access, but that's certainly not the case today. While we are seeing, the research in different publications, publishers, journals move in that direction, there still is a lot of valuable information behind a paywall. So this is something we often hear is, you need easy, convenient access to full text papers, but we also need to be able to understand more information about that paper before we decide we want to buy it. So again, these are some of the things we'll be talking about throughout our webinar today. Hopefully they are something you can relate to. And in the next slide here, we're actually going to ask for your input. So we have a poll just to get a sense of what challenges impact you the most. This is information that, of course, is interesting and important to us. And it will also help us, make sure that our webinar today is relevant to you. So the question again is, which challenge impacts you the most? Is it identifying those relevant papers? Is it the information overload? Extracting and synthesizing information from literature, managing your references, access to full text papers, or it could also be something else. So you can specify that in the chat here as well.
Awesome. I see everyone is already filling out the survey. So let's give you just another second here, and then we can look at the results together. Okay, I see someone added in the chat, all of the above.
Always good to hear. Welcome the input. Thank you all.
Another one, integrating, inventorying, and keeping track of the great stuff I find. Makes sense. Number 2, information overload. Okay, thanks everyone for adding that in the chat here. I think we've got most responses, so let me end the poll so we can look at these together.
Cool.
Share results. Okay.
Awesome. So extracting and synthesizing information. Well, that seems to be the most popular response. Almost half of the responses we have fall in that category. So again, it makes sense why you're all here today. So hopefully we'll show you some of the great things that we're working on here at Research Solutions and specifically with Scite to help tackle that, but also some of these other problems that we see you guys are encountering. Awesome. So that being said, again, hopefully that was a helpful way to queue up our demonstration today. I do want to quickly talk about sort of the workflows and the different ways that, again, Research Solutions is trying to help alleviate some of these problems throughout our product family here. And then we'll jump into the demonstration. So again, I promise I won't bore you with more PowerPoint slides. But for the demonstration today, we're really going to be focusing on the discovery part of literature, finding literature. So searching, understanding the literature that's available to you, being able to quickly understand not only research that's relevant to your topic or the project that you're currently working on, but also being able to validate and find credible sources. So that will be one part of our demonstration today. And then, of course, we do have other solutions here at Research Solutions, including Article Galaxy references, which help with the accessing content. So again, the full text literature that might be behind a paywall. That is, of course, where Article Galaxy lends its strengths, but also managing content. This can be tackled directly in Article Galaxy references as well. So you can actually organize literature that your organization has purchased. You can share it with team members. Just create sort of a centralized repository of information that's available to the wider organization. And then there is the analyze part of the workflow here. So understanding, key information from each article, preferably before you have to purchase it. Is it a credible resource? And then we, of course, will show you today how Scite Tables is going to help you integrate that data, find some patterns, and also, potentially research that might conflict or validate some of your findings. Great. So that being said, we're going to dive into the demonstration today. So I will be taking you through an in-depth step-by-step of how you can create a table in Scite, how we can start to extract some specific information from publications in this structured output. We have some really cool options for customizing the output as well. So that will be the next part of our webinar today. So give me a second to pull up Scite here. Awesome. So you should be seeing Scite on my screen currently. Scite, if you don't know, is one of the products that Research Solutions acquired about 2 years ago now. It is a database that primarily was built for academic researchers. It is giving you insight and sort of additional information on published papers and even book chapters, because it does take you beyond sort of the abstract, or even gives you some insight into content that is behind a paywall. So Scite was built on a database of citation statements. Again, this comes from the full text of the paper, and really will extract the snippets to show where findings from a specific paper were supported, mentioned, or contrasted. So maybe the findings in future research were different than the findings that were mentioned in the paper. So if you think about, potentially searching PubMed, I think this is a resource that's widely utilized in the industry. So hopefully many of you are familiar with that, but searching within PubMed, beyond using your sort of Boolean operators, other filters for metadata, you do have information such as the number of times a paper has been cited that can help with assessing things like the potential impact or reach of a paper. The more it's been cited, the more people that are interacting with that or utilizing that research. But Scite actually does lend additional context into those citations. So it's allowing you to see, which papers, maybe they received 50 citations, how many of those were in support of those findings, or how many of those were contrasting. Or again, if it's sort of a neutral mention, we do track that as well. So that is sort of how Scite was started. And then we actually built the assistant on top of that, which is powered by a GPT model or an LLM to help summarize, but also retrieve relevant references, based on a sort of research question. So we'll take you through that today. I just wanted to set the stage of, what Scite is for those that might not be familiar. But as you can see here, we can ask a question, and I can opt into a table mode if I want that output from the get-go. We do have some sample questions that are available as well, which we can use just to test it out. But I prepared some specific examples for the call today. So the first question that we'll take a look at is, give me 1 second here. Let's summarize recent studies in amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. So we're using a natural language question here. I'm going to show you just sort of the standard output, and then we'll transition into a table mode. So as you're seeing here, this is working in real time to find relevant sources. So it does convert your question into a Boolean search string. You can start to validate that here on the right-hand side of your screen. We can also edit these search strings if we find it's not really what we're interested in. So you do have that insight into how it's starting to aggregate these references for us. So it does default to pulling in 25 of the most relevant sources here. So you'll see this is our standard output. After a few moments, it gives me this sort of high-level summary of the information that I'm interested in, along with inline references. So here I can actually see what reference was used to generate that specific information. And then, of course, if I hover over the reference, I can also get a quick insight into that article here, as well as those badges, which show you the citation metrics. So again, this paper here had 33 different citations. Within those 33 papers, there were 2 citation statements that were supporting, as well as 36 that were just mentioning, and no contrasting. So a paper, just to clarify any confusion here, there are 33 papers that referenced this paper, but there might be more than one citation statement within that paper. So that's why you're not seeing these numbers here add up to 33. But this just gives us a way to quickly validate, understand, is this research something I can trust? Or, if there are contrasting statements, maybe that's a resource that, I might not want to put my trust in. So just to give you some of the background here and how Assistant is working. But let me show you this as a table instead. So, traditionally you'll have this sort of text block output. It's great for understanding, information about a new research area or for getting started on a project. But if I switch to show as table, we'll now be able to understand some of these insights and interrogate the references in this structured output. So you'll see it works pretty quickly here. It's going to first show me each of the references that it's chosen, and then it will give me a quick response, sort of standard summary for each of those references. So already we're starting to build this table, and I can start to quickly, validate whether this is a reference I'm interested in, but also start to understand some of the specific information from that publication that is, relevant to the project I'm working on, the information I'm trying to extract. So, alternatively, you'd have to go into the abstract. Maybe you'll get a sense of whether or not that paper is relevant or not. You might then have to buy the paper if it's behind a paywall, and then read through the paper to really understand and pull out specific information from the literature. In this case, using Scite Tables, what I can do is add a column and then use additional prompt engineering to pull out those targeted insights. So in this case, if I wanted to understand more information about what patients were treated on these studies here, I could add a column for that. So in this case, I'll label it patients. You can label it whatever you want. And then we can give it instructions. This is again where you just specify what information you're interested in pulling out of the literature here. So in this case, I want it to describe the inclusion criteria. If I spelled it correctly. Ooh, there we go. For patients enrolled. Again, the typos today. Enrolled in the study. Okay, so I've asked it my additional question, again, checking for typos here. You'll also see additional options for formatting. So I could opt into bullet points if I wanted. Say there's like multiple drugs or something listed or being tested in the study. I can also adjust the answer length. So if I want a more detailed output, I could select medium or long. In this case, I'll keep it as short, and then I'll go ahead and add the column. You can also edit the column after the fact, so you're certainly not locked into it at this point. If it does not give you the response that you're interested in, but you'll see pretty quickly here, it does summarize the inclusion criteria for the study. So now I can see sort of how patients were selected and based on what criteria here for each of the references. I can, of course, continue to build on this. So I can add additional columns if, for example, I'm interested in, understanding what endpoints were being looked at. So if I were to add a column here for endpoints, I can ask it what endpoints were being evaluated and were they missed or met. So again, it could be any variation of this depending on what you're interested in, but I'll go ahead and add this column as well. And then we'll give that a moment to aggregate here. So again, I'm just asking specific questions to gather the insights from the study rather than having to go through and read each individual study and manually sort of take note of these data points. So here I now have an endpoints column, and then I can scroll down as well to show you, again, it's doing this for each reference that is included in the response. So I know I've gone through this example here. I do want to make note of other ways you can modify the output. We do have settings that are available here under assistant settings. This will apply to sort of the standard text block output as well, but you can introduce some bias here into assistant as well as how it selects specific references. So I'll go through some options here. I'm not going to go through all, but you'll see I do have, table mode option, so you can toggle back and forth. I can specify a reference year range. So if I really want to prioritize references from just the past 5 years, I can set a from date. You don't necessarily have to include it too, but again, depends on what year range you're looking at. You can also select publication types. So in this case, we might be more interested in looking at clinical trial data. We can select that. You'll also see things like multi-center studies, but also things like meta-analyses, systematic reviews, things like that. We can specify a citation style if you want to change, depending on, if you're doing this for, any sort of submission. And then recently, we've also introduced an updated model for the assistant. So again, we are using GPT. Until recently, it was 04 mini, and now we just upgraded to 03 mini. So that is exciting. We are trying to, of course, keep this as up-to-date and powerful as possible. So for those of you that don't know, 03 mini is a reasoning model. So it should be able to provide more in-depth responses. It should also be a little bit faster. So there are a lot of major benefits to adding a reasoning model to the assistant here as well. Great. You can also increase the number of publications you want it to consider. This does go, up to 100. And then we can also select specific journals. So again, trust and confidence in the output is a big concern for a lot of people using AI. So if you select or have it consider just the journals that you do have trust in, that is a great way to ensure that the output is going to be more trustworthy as well and have more critical, insights into your research topic. So you do have that option. We can also create custom dashboards using search in Scite, which is not included in the demonstration today, but similar to PubMed, you can also search for papers as well as citation statements, and then you can aggregate your results into a dashboard and then focus assistant just on those results from your search. So it is a nice way to, again, sort of limit the corpus that it selects from, and then focus it on a validated set of results that you've formulated. So just to give you some insights into how we can control the output, influence the output, and also, increase some of the trust and confidence we have in the results here. Okay, I do want to take you through a couple other examples. I think the only other thing I'll touch on here before we move on is we do have an option to download the response to a CSV file. This will include additional metadata about the publications as well as your custom columns. So you'll see your answers would be included in that output, and then you can select all this additional information, including the number of supporting, mentioning, and contrasting citations in that output as well. So you have a lot of great information you can analyze within the table in addition to those custom columns. Okay, I actually see we have quite a few chats or questions in the chat, which we will get to in a few minutes. So thank you all for the engagement there. Just to acknowledge that you're there, I see you. But what I do want to show you is just a couple of examples of how you can start to use Scite tables here. So let me start a new chat. All right, so coming back here to assistant, I am going to opt into table mode just right from the start here. And let's say I'm interested in, what drugs have been used in combination with the well-known Keytruda. So this is a great way, again, to be able to quickly understand specific drugs that have been used alongside Keytruda. We'll also take a look at what indications the combination was used for. So I'll show you quickly how we can extract that information here also. And then while this is pulling up, I do want to just quickly mention, you'll see some additional options here under each reference. So view full text, that's one of the challenges we talked about earlier in the demonstration, the presentation today. So you can click through to view the abstract or get access to the open access article. But again, because we integrate with Article Galaxy, if you have an Article Galaxy account, you can also click through to access that through your Article Galaxy subscription. So this one here is open access. If it's not, it will show the price or if there's a rental option and how you can acquire that through the Article Galaxy subscription as well. So I do want to make note of that because again, by integrating these two things together, not only are we helping to making it easier to discover relevant and trusted sources, we also want to make sure that you have an easy way to access that full text should you need it. Okay, so you can see here it's generating the response for my question about, what drugs have been used in combination with Keytruda. I'm going to add a column here for the drug name. So what is the name of the drug? It might be, multiple drugs as well used with Keytruda. In this case, maybe I want to use a bullet point. I can use that option here. So I'll go ahead and add that column. I'm going to add another one for indication as well, but I'll do that after the fact here once it's loaded. One important thing to mention, we can add currently up to 5 columns if you have an organizational license with Scite. So if your organization has decided to purchase a certain number of seats or licenses, currently you can add up to 5 columns. If you're accessing through a personal account, currently you can add up to 2. So just to give you some insight into how many columns you can currently leverage here within Scite Tables. So you'll see it pulls out the information just about the drug that I'm interested in. And then if I want information about the indication, I'll say, what indication are the drugs being studied for? You might have a more eloquent way of putting this, but we'll go ahead and input that quickly. You'll see quickly, I don't have to be an expert to get the information that I'm interested in here. So again, we've added a couple columns, but it is a really nice way just to get some insight specifically into these key data points without having to go through and read the paper. Of course, it's important to validate the insights. So again, you can do that here just by hovering over, the little eye icon and then scrolling through to get a preview of that text. Great. The other thing I do want to note, I mentioned we added the O3 Mini, the new large language model. We also recently added Open Athens. So for academic institutions, accessing is now easier, more secure than ever. So we are, of course, interested in complying with security standards and addressing those concerns. So yeah, you can now access your institutional license via Open Athens. Yeah. So I think, Julia, that's about all we'll show in the demonstration, but I know we have a lot of questions already, so maybe it's time to move on.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much, Heidi, and thanks everyone for all the questions. Let's get through them. First of all, I'll add a link here. So you can head over there. It's Scite AI/assistant. You can also, you have 2 free searches, so you can test it in your own time if you'd like to get a sense of that. And then also, if you'd like additional information, if you're interested in an institutional license, you want to bring more people on a call, I'm adding a second link here. Head over there. If you fill out the the forum, you have the option to directly book a meeting, or if you prefer being in touch via email, we could definitely do that as well. Okay, if you're an existing customer, also one note, feel free to reach out, of course, to your account manager. If you don't know who that is, then with the same forum, we'll make sure that we direct you to the right person. Okay, so the first question I see is, might you speak to the reliability of citations, that they're not hallucinations? Might Scite have any metrics on citation reliability?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I do, and obviously that's a concern for many when it comes to using any sort of AI tool, especially in research in the life sciences industry. So that is something we are, constantly working towards as well. I think, being able to see the responses here, also to show, the snippets, where the information has come from within the paper. That's a quick way, that you can actually use to, validate the information that's being generated within the table without having to click through to like the full resource. So we do want to provide that transparency into the information that's being generated. That's why with the text block output as well, we have that inline referencing, so you can see exactly what publication or reference was used to generate that information. So that's always been important to us here at Scite and at Research Solutions as well. I think the citations also do help assess the credibility of a paper. So again, if there are a number of supporting statements that can, indicate that, this research has been repeated, or it can be, it has evidence to support that it is, a strong claim. So that's one way that we can use the badges here, and why we've incorporated them into the table output to help you assess how credible, that reference is. So we certainly do have, more we can do to help users with the confidence. Of course, that's going to be a continuous thing for any AI tool that's available today. But again, one of our the things that we do prioritize is giving you transparency and access to that data. So yeah, it's certainly an ongoing conversation. I'm glad you raised it, but hopefully that gives you some assurance.
Yeah, that was a good question. I'm sure many people on this call have a similar question or concern.
Yeah.
Was the summary generated from abstract or full text?
Yeah, it's a good question. So in most cases, Scite does index the full text article. There are some exceptions to that. Again, that's going to be true for any resource. So things like Elsevier, who do not like to give, access to their full text articles, really to anybody. In those cases, we index only the abstract. So for a majority of the publishers and journals that we have, we do index the full text. And then, yeah, of course, we have the citation snippets or statements. So we do display those, which are from the full text as well. And again, that's the basis, how Scite was built. It's built on this data set of citation statements from the full text.
Awesome. One question I saw come up as well is this webinar being recorded? It is being recorded, and also I'll be sending out the recording to all of you. So yeah, probably an hour or two after this webinar ends, I'll send the recording to you all. Feel free to rewatch or share with your colleagues, of course. Oh yeah, right. Another question about the recording. Yes, we got you covered there. Okay, another one I see in the chat. Does Scite use all articles? I struggle to find newest articles. So how long does it take to add newly published articles? And does Scite Assistant use full text or only abstracts?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think I kind of answered some of that in the last one, that last part of your question. I think, was it news articles or just the newest articles?
The newest.
Newest, gotcha. Yeah, so Scite is actually updating in real time here. So, versus something like ChatGPT, where the data is kind of stagnant, it's also out of date. That's not going to be the case here in Scite. So if you want Assistant to prioritize the newest articles, you can do that from your settings menu. It does default to relevance, but again, if you want it to prioritize recency, go ahead and select that here from the settings. So you do have that option. That should help you. But we do have content from, that's new. So I certainly don't want to deter you from that. So again, I think using the recency setting will help. And then, yeah, you will be seeing new articles in here as well. And I think just to go back to one of the previous examples, so you'll see like this one here, this is a paper from 2024. So it's our first reference. And then, 2022, again, my question was based on recent studies. So that could also be something you include in the question you're using. But yeah, it typically does prioritize relevance based on your question. You can certainly change, what that prioritizes in those assistant settings.
Great. There's one follow-up to this question. Can you define what newest article means? Is it 1 week, 1 year, 1 month ago?
Yeah, we certainly should have things from the past week. So it is being updated. We get a information from Crossref. So anything with a DOI, if that's available, we should have that here in Scite. So it is being updated on an ongoing basis.
Awesome. Okay, another question is, I would love to see a use case or example of using the dashboard to limit search parameters.
Yeah, great question. I think we can definitely show you how to create a dashboard. And then we'll show you how you can, again, just remind you how you can select that from the settings. So Scite does have a search as well. So you can search by a title, a keyword, an author. Let's look at Keytruda for metastatic breast. I cannot type today. Okay, so I'm going to search for Keytruda and metastatic breast cancer here, just to give you an idea of how you can start to search. What you're seeing, this is a search both for papers as well as the citation statements. So each result here is showing a paper that has been cited, as well as any of the statements that we're pulling out from the full text. So you'll see it does display 2 statements. It shows you the section where that's being, where that statement was made in the paper. So it could be in the results section, the discussion, and you can modify where you want these statements to occur. So if you wanted to see papers where it was just stated in like the results, you can apply that as a filter here. We can also look for papers that have a certain number of citation statements. If I'm looking for those really credible sources, again, in this result where we have over 350,000 results, I might be interested in looking at papers that have at least 10 supporting statements. So I can narrow that down using these filters as well. I do have to get down to papers that have or a data set of less than 1,000 results here. So let me increase this. Let's look at more than 20. I'm doing this on the fly, so give me a second here to narrow this down enough so I can create a dashboard. So again, we don't want you to pull in tens of thousands of results. So there's a reason, why we wanted to limit the data set. So in this case, again, if you get it under 1,000, I can be pretty generous here. Great. So from here, once I'm under 1,000 and I have a data set that I feel is relevant, that doesn't pull in a bunch of false positives or whatever, I can create a dashboard. So it's a great way to aggregate relevant information, narrow down the data set. I can also opt into email alerts or save it as a search, but I'll just go ahead and create the dashboard here. So now I've sort of set parameters for a specific range of references for a system to pull from. And then if I go into my assistant, I can select from the settings menu a dashboard. So I could use that Keytruda in metastatic breast cancer result and then apply that here. And then we'll only pull from those sources within the search. So it is a nice way to just narrow down the frame of reference a little bit and make sure it is focusing on just those highly supported papers. Great
Awesome.
question.
Yeah, great question. And thank you, Heidi, for taking us through that process. I see a few questions similar to kind of like the dashboard. So I think those are covered. If there's a question you think I should call out here, feel free to just add it here again. Where are the citations being retrieved from? Can you speak about the corpus being queried?
Yeah, great question. So Scite does pull in anything with a DOI. So all of that those DOIs, papers, as well as book chapters are indexed in full in Scite. Again, the exceptions being Elsevier, where we just have the abstracts currently. But Scite has spent years negotiating and developing these relationships with the publishers directly to be able to display the information you're seeing here in Scite. So we do pull out the snippets, which are from the full text. So again, those can occur at any point throughout the paper. We do track whether they occur in the introduction, the methods, the results, discussion, etc. So we can see the various parts of the paper where these citation statements come from. But it basically is pulling out anywhere where we see a citation was made, and it also analyzes the context in which the citation was made. So is it in support of those findings? Is it contrasting those findings? Or is it neutral, i.e., is it just mentioning them? So that's where these citation statements come from. And again, hopefully it gives you an idea of the papers we're querying against, what our sources are. We do have a list of journals. I can probably pull that up here quickly so you can see what's covered. And I'll share that in the chat as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, a question that many people might have. With a personal license, as you mentioned, you can add 2 columns. With the institutional license, you have 5. Is there any workaround? Like, could you delete a column to then add a second one again, or how does that work?
Yeah, you certainly could. So you can remove any column just by clicking on the settings here, or again, you can edit it. Again, the limit, because we just rolled this new feature out, I think it's only been available now for about 3 weeks. We wanted to make sure we got the functionality right before we allowed users to create bunches of columns. So that was done on purpose, but we certainly are looking at ways to scale up the output here. So it might not be 2 forever. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have too much of a workaround, but certainly you can create one table, export it, and that will again export the custom columns. You could then delete those columns, add 2 new ones, and then export that information as well. So it is going to be a little bit of a lift just because of that cap. But yeah, I don't think it will be there forever. So we're certainly looking at ways to increase the capabilities and potentially allow you to add more columns. So thanks for that feedback.
Yeah, definitely. Can you save each search summary at Scite, or do you have to save the table on a file on your computer?
Yeah, it's a good question. So again, you do have the option to export the table as a CSV. In most cases, you'll see we do have like a chat history as well. So I can refer back to previous versions of the column. There is a limit, which you'll see I have hit here. But yeah, you can always go back and delete old ones and just save the ones that are relevant to you, that are useful to you. So the system will be able to track those. That does include your custom columns as well. So those do live in the platform. So yeah, you certainly do have a few options there.
Awesome. Is this exportable as a CSV file?
Yes, yep, that's the only option currently is CSV. So you'll see if I click on download, export table, yep, currently it's just for CSV.
Great. Does this platform have the capability to extract data from figures when the data isn't reported in text? If so, how accurate is this process, and how does the AI estimate the data?
Good question. And this is something we do talk a lot, about internally. At the moment, this does not extract insights from figures. We are aware that there's a lot of important information and data within the figures themselves. So that is something we're assessing how to do currently. I do think the O3 mini model will help us get closer to that. But yeah, at the moment, figures are not extracted within the assistant capabilities.
Hey, can I use this with a reference manager?
Yes, so a lot of people do use this with a reference manager. Again, if you have access to Article Galaxy, which is, our solution for acquiring and managing scientific literature. You can access, one purchase, the document through Article Galaxy, and then that gets stored in Article Galaxy references so that anyone in your organization can then go and access the paper. So it just helps to ensure that you're accessing papers at the lowest cost possible. Also eliminating things like repeat purchases, which does happen because people just are unaware of who's purchased what paper within their organization typically. But again, coming back to export, I feel like I keep talking about that, but you can download this, import it into other things like EndNote. So there are ways that you can certainly include this information in a reference manager.
Awesome. Okay, can we feed a list of references to Scite and ask the software, sorry, it just moved around, ask the software to help us with data processing, extraction, discussion, or can we only start from typing the research question in human language?
Yeah, that's a great question. There is an option for uploading documents into Scite and the assistant. So you'll see analyze documents. So you do have the ability to select those. Typically it's a PDF or something. And then you can introduce that into assistant as well. Also the dashboards, I think that's a great way to create that sort of list of references first, and then introduce that into assistant. So those are the two ways that I would do that at the moment. But yeah, we are looking at, potentially other workflows, once you sort of identified papers, being able to summarize those in platform as well. So yeah, I certainly understand the question. I appreciate it. We have some ways of tackling that, but yeah, there's definitely more to come also.
Awesome. Okay, and then we have two questions. What features do you get with Article Galaxy in general? And also for articles that are not available as full text, can I buy the full text and then have it included to the overview by hand? Or can it be included from Article Galaxy? That's why I kind of like mix those two questions.
Yeah, two really good questions. So Article Galaxy, Article Galaxy was built to help you get quick access to full text papers, or, even things like open access papers. Oftentimes it will deliver those instantly, directly in the platform. It also does give you a rental option in some cases. It even does allow you to layer in sort of organizational subscriptions to publishers or like token packages. So it's really intended just to help you gain access to literature at the lowest cost possible. So sort of increasing efficiency in purchasing and managing scientific content. So that is, sort of its core capabilities, but there is also the option to understand reuse rights. I think there was another question about copyrights that I don't think we addressed, but you can use Article Galaxy as well to understand reuse rights and copyright. So you can see if you have the ability to present a paper to an external audience or just use it internally. We're also, we just announced that we're going to be doing text and data mining rights as well. So that's going to be another option within our reuse rights environment. And then there's references, which is where, we have this sort of company PDF library, but we give you options for organizing the literature. So you can create folders and subfolders, which certain users can have access to, or you can share with colleagues. You can even create company-wide folders, and there's a lot of capabilities there. So yeah, hopefully that gives you an idea of the features through Article Galaxy. And then the second question is sort of, once you have access to the full text, can that be introduced into Scite Assistant? I believe that's the extent of the question. That is, again, why we're looking at the text and data mining rights and why that's important. Most publishers don't want you using AI tools on their full text capabilities for summarizing and extracting insights. Again, we are working with publishers directly to help them understand that this is, not only valuable for customers, but also valuable for the publishers, and that this truly is a partnership and will help them with engagement and making sure that, people are continuously interacting with their content. So with text and data mining rights, we will be able to do that, but we sort of do have to ensure that we are being compliant, our customers are compliant as well in how they're accessing and using AI on those full text articles. So at the moment, no, but again, we're working on it.
Amazing. Thank you. And I'm adding a link here to kind of like our get in touch with sales page again. So if you're interested, kind of like jump on a call, get to learn how the like research process at your institution, at the company could look like across kind of like Article Galaxy, references, Scite. I'm happy to jump on a call and look at your specific use case and work that out. What industries do you focus on, or can Scite be used for any industry?
Yeah, so because Scite indexes anything with a DOI, really we cover all industries. So I think there is, a focus slightly on, life sciences. I think generally we support a lot of customers in that area. But yeah, any sort of research, we do support consumer products, agriculture, even chemical companies. So yeah, there's certainly no limit to the industries that we can support here.
Perfect. Talking of limits, is there a limit to the uploaded PDFs?
That's a good question. It might depend on your level of access. So yeah, I believe for like institutional licenses, I don't believe there's a limit, but if you have a personal account, there might be. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but yeah, typically we see more limits with the personal accounts.
Awesome. How can I add my own documents to be summarized and included within the reports? What are the possible formats?
Great question. I think at the moment it's limited to PDFs. And again, you can see I have the option to focus that on those specific documents here in Assistant. I don't have any uploaded currently. So I will make a mental note to fix that. But yeah, so you can upload, I believe at the moment it's PDFs, and have Assistant focus on those documents and the summarizations as well as the table output.
Awesome. Okay. So many questions. I'm trying to
I know there
read
are a
through
lot.
these here as these come in. So bear a second here with me. Okay. How do you cite in a research paper? Good question.
That is a good question. Yeah, I mean, obviously it depends on the format that you're interested in, but in most cases, it will generate the citation for you. So again, you can change the citation style depending on your format of interest. So we have a few different options here: MLA, Chicago, Harvard, BibTeX. So you can change the citation style. So it should generate those citations for you. Also, if you do have access to Article Galaxy and Article Galaxy references, there is a Word add-in, which will also help to import those citations into things like a Word document. So that's also another tool that maybe you have access to if you're not aware. But yeah, we do have that option as well.
Great. Okay, here's also a message. Unfortunately, I couldn't open the chat. My question, is there any written text on how to use Scite AI for journal search? Any manual for the menu? Great presentation. Thank you for that comment.
Gotcha. I will come back to that. I think it looks like the question was, do we need to cite in a paper? Yeah, that's a good question. I think that's come up in the past. I think you can say, generated from Scite.ai if you're using sort of the text output. I don't think there's any specific sort of citation format, but just acknowledging sort of how the information was generated. Or again, if you're using a table, I believe that will include things like the reference. But yeah, I don't think you necessarily need to cite in that case. Okay, sorry to come back to that other question. Let me repeat that question, Julia. Apologies.
Sure. Do we have any written text on how to use Scite AI for journal search?
Gotcha. We do have a few manuals. It depends on if you're using, the search or Scite Assistant. I know we have a lot of guides on best practices for Scite Assistant, which we can share. And they're also available on our webpage as well. We have some tutorials also, if that would be helpful. But But yeah, I don't know if we have one specifically for a journal search, but that gives me a great idea for something we can work on. So yeah.
Yeah, I'll look for the link in just a moment and add it in the chat here. Let me read out the next question in the meanwhile.
Okay.
Could this technology be built into a discovery service subscription and or an extension in one's browser?
Good question. We do have a browser extension for the citation badges. So if you are using something like PubMed, let me actually pull up PubMed here. You will be able to use the browser extension. Sorry, this is the Article Galaxy browser extension. So you will be able to see things like the citation badges. Let me make sure I have this up, which will show you, I already have it added. It would be able to show you sort of which papers were had supporting citations as well as contrasting citations. So you'll see here, I can use the abstract view and see right off the bat, this was cited 207 times. Only one is supporting, the rest are just mentioning. So it does give you that insight as well if you're using other discovery services. Yeah, the assistant, not so much. We are thinking about that. We've even potentially discussed like a Word add-in. So we have some ideas. But yeah, at the moment, the browser extension is purely for the citation statements.
Getting back to that first question, I did find the link. So adding it in the chat here right now, that's kind of like our help desk. So if you head over there, there's like many different questions that we get asked frequently. So you'll find tutorials, questions, and so on. If you're looking for something specific, always feel free to reach out to us directly, and then we're happy to help. Are the features in settings allowed according to subscription fees you have paid? I have noticed some features are not active for me.
Yeah, there are some differences in the subscription models. I know extracting citation statements from a specific paper is one feature that you do not have access to. So it definitely does depend. For instance, like if you come here to a paper and you want to export the citation statements here, the references, I don't believe that's available for like a B2C subscription or a personal subscription. So yeah, there might be some differences in the features you have access to. I think the model, like the GPT model, I think that's restricted, and possibly a few others as well.
Hey, do you have any data on your site that provides percentages of the coverage? Let me add a link here in the chat that kind of talks about coverage a bit more.
Yeah.
Just added that there. Okay, we have 3 more minutes. Let's see how many questions we can answer. Giving our best here. Is there an AI that can transpose output from Scite into a literature review, for example?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think, again, that's an area where we are trying to further develop something like Scite, making it a more sort of systematic review. So at the moment, no, but, as we start to grow sort of our B2B offering, our offering for the industry and different corporations, that is certainly something we will be working on. So yeah.
What about data protection? If I upload own material, is there any risk to upload confidential data?
Yeah, so we don't track your data. The only thing that we do save is things like your queries in platform. But because we're using the GPT API, all of those calls and things are made on behalf of Scite and not the customer or the user. So your information is not shared outside of Scite. If you do have any concerns about things like the chat history or the saved queries, we can disable that for you. But again, that's the only information that we sort of save in platform.
Awesome. Are searches reproducible? Will they consistently return the same citations each time?
It's a great question. That is, one thing about AI and LLMs is the output is not 100% reproducible. I typically find it's very close. But again, because this is, not yet built for things like, systematic review where it has to be repeatable, you have to be able to verify and provide the search. yeah, that's an area where we still need to develop. But again, that's the case for any AI tool that uses LLMs. It is not going to be 100% repeatable.
Okay, awesome. The last question I think we'll take to end is, can you share the links included in the chat? Can copy from the chat. Yes, absolutely. When I send the email with the recording in like an hour or two, I'll make sure to add the links to kind of like the help desk, the coverage, everything that we've mentioned here today. And I think we had like 20 minutes of all of your questions. I know we didn't get to all of them. I hope most. If not, I'd encourage you, feel free to reach out, hit reply to that email, use the links that I send, get in touch with us, and then we're happy to jump on a call with you and discuss any additional questions. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Thank you so much, Heidi, for showing us through Scite Tables as well as answering all of these great questions. Yeah, have fun with Scite, explore Scite Tables on your own, and see you on the next one.
Yeah, thanks all.
Goodbye.